Now, with all the terrible things that have happened over the Christmas and New Year's break, one thing has become clear to me. We are being told to no longer trust our eyes and ears, but instead believe the political rhetoric. Let's look at the case of 37-year-old Renee Good, shot dead by an ICE agent in Minneapolis last week. This is the latest video shot by ICE agent Jonathan Ross, the man who pulled the trigger 3 times.
I'm not mad at you. Show your face. I'm not mad at you. That's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking veteran. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car.
Oh!
Fucking bitch.
Now, there are 2 things that strike me about that video. Her calm demeanour when he's going past her and the words he spoke after he killed her. She said, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." And after he had killed this woman, Ross said, "Fucking bitch." Now, whatever your politics, how do you justify that? No remorse, no care. But this has turned into a very political issue. Almost immediately, US government officials went on the attack.
It was an act of domestic terrorism. What happened was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle. An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him. And my understanding is that she was hit and is deceased.
So that was a couple of hours after this death occurred. No investigation, no actual trying to get information, deciding what the narrative is because it's protect ICE at all costs. Again, whatever your politics, I don't think you can label this as domestic terrorism, but that's exactly what's happening. And in fact, that rhetoric was backed up by Vice President J.D. Vance even after more information and videos had come to light.
When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The President stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognizing that you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car. He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before, and everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
But I don't think that's the narrative anyone has put forward. No one's saying she was just driving by and got shot. She was being a nuisance. She was parked in the middle of the road. But protesting is a right in America in a democratic society. Now, I've spoken here many times about protesters being annoying, especially the ones that glue their hands or throw paint at artworks. I hate it. But is that worthy of being shot? There's all these false narratives going around about who this woman was and child abuse, and I don't know the truth about that. But I know that in that moment, that woman didn't threaten anyone, and by my observation, looked as though she was reversing around to move out of the way and drive around. And everything that I've seen about how law enforcement is actually taught in these situations is never be in front of the car because it can be used as a weapon. You're meant to come around the side. Now, I don't know if the gentleman was hit, the ICE agent. I don't know if he was hit or not. It's very confusing to me. There's certainly angles where it looks like he was hit. There's other angles that don't look like it. His phone does move at the time it's all happening, but he's also firing a gun at the time. But what's important to note is this narrative is being delivered before any investigation, the narrative of J.D. Vance that this was an attack. And, you know, the whole backstory about this woman being part of protesting. Yeah, that's America. You're allowed to protest. But this government, the US government, has acted as judge and jury, telling Americans and the world what to believe, to ignore their own eyes and ears. We face a situation where a narrative has been decided and everyone in the administration is singing from the same songbook. And it doesn't matter what you're seeing. Your judgment seems to be determined on politics. I'm a centrist. I will look at an issue on both the left and right and I will make decisions. Now, in my opinion, she was doing the wrong thing. She was potentially fleeing as she was told to get out of the car. But was she intentionally targeting that ICE officer to kill him? Absolutely not. We also have this other narrative. We're talking about narratives a lot, but we have this other narrative about the fact that the ICE officer had been attacked by a car just 6 months ago.
I mean, he was under attack once with a vehicle. So certainly, and like I said earlier, totality of the circumstance, just to that prior incident. Yeah. But the environment right now with the threats against ICE officers have been shot at. They've had Molotov cocktails thrown on them. They've been doxxed. There've been, again, assaults up over 1,300%. Threats alone up 8,000%. And you're in a situation with this lady where it's impeding and interfering already. He's in a dangerous situation. And again, I want people to understand this. Put yourself in his shoes. Put yourself in his shoes where he's in that environment. Assaults against ICE officers all-time high. You have a vehicle that is pointed toward him and accelerates toward him. He has a second to make that decision. And I truly believe, and again, this will come out in the investigation, that in his mind, he feared for his life and he took appropriate action. And that, and according to federal law, that's a legitimate response. And even according to Minnesota law, Minnesota state law even talks about a vehicle coming towards you and your right to defend yourself. This officer, I think in his mind, did the right thing to save his own life and life of others.
I think there's an argument that he believed his life was in danger. But should he have been in that position? If he was having PTSD from this event from 6 months ago where a car was driven towards him, then maybe he shouldn't have been on the job. Because it doesn't matter if he's been under that situation. ICE officers have been shot at. You have to judge this situation on its merits. What was her intent? Judging by the video, I take it that her intent was not to attack him. Now, in a moment, you're going to see another video come up here that will show a dual screen. So look as this video goes around. She has her hand out the window. This is not defensive. She's half smiling and she's saying, yeah, we're protesting, but I'm not mad at you, dude. He's completely ignored that to get the number plate for possible future use. Now, the wife, she certainly gives some lip. And we can see on the other angle that she's gone around, and we're seeing now this other ICE agent. So they're working separately. They're not giving the same message. And yes, this is a moment of panic, but we see her reverse, and she has turned the wheel to the right, and she has not, in my opinion, aimed for it. A lot of the government's position has been that Good was using her car as a weapon. In fact, they released that vision from the ICE agent to prove it. But that's not what it says to me. Yes, she was doing the wrong thing, but it doesn't mean she deserves to die. It just doesn't mean she has to die. He cannot blame it on an incident he had 6 months ago. That's no excuse. An officer needs to be in the position to de-escalate. There's also an argument about there's no warrants. These people are masked, these ICE agents, and they say it's because of doxing. That means that people are getting hold of their information and releasing it on the internet. When you work for the government, you essentially lose your right to privacy because you are acting on behalf of the people. There's a lot of anger about what's happening with ICE, and these people have their right to protest. But over the weekend, just overnight in fact, Kristi Noem doubled down on her belief this was domestic terrorism.
Well, everything that I've said has been proven to be factual and the truth. This administration wants to operate in transparency. I have the responsibility as the Secretary of Homeland Security to know this information as soon as possible. Had just been in Minneapolis the day before, had already had conversations with officers on the ground and supervisors, and knew the facts, and decided that the department and the people of this country deserve to know the truth of the situation of what had unfolded in Minneapolis.
But with all due respect, Secretary, the first thing you said was, quote, what happened was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow. Correct. Because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle. Mm-hmm. That's not what happened. We all saw what happened.
It absolutely is what happened. Those officers had been out in enforcement action. A vehicle had been stuck. They had come to help get that vehicle out. That's when this individual started blocking traffic for minutes and minutes.
You said that the woman attacked them and surrounded them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle.
Blocked the road for a long time and was yelling at them and impeding a federal law enforcement investigation. And that's what you need to focus on, Jake, is they were breaking the law by impeding and obstructing a law enforcement operation. They were breaking the law already, and these officers were doing their due diligence and what their training had prepared them to do to make sure they were handling it appropriately.
You said within hours of her being killed, you said that she was a domestic terrorist. How do you define domestic terrorist?
She weaponized her vehicle to conduct an act of violence against a law enforcement officer and the public. They are doing that.
How can you assert with certainty that she was trying to hurt the officer as opposed to she was trying to flee the scene?
If you look at what the definition of domestic terrorism is, it completely fits the situation on the ground. This individual, as you saw in the video that we released just 48 hours after this incident, showed that this officer was hit by her vehicle. She weaponized it, and he defended his life and those colleagues around him and the public.
The question is, I don't doubt. My position is, I wasn't there. Mm-hmm. I didn't see it. Some people say that it clearly showed that she was trying to hit him. And did. Mm-hmm. Some people say, no, she was clearly trying to move her car and flee and get away. I don't know. What I'm saying is, how do you know? How can you assert for a fact within hours, before any investigation, this is what happened?
The facts of the situation are that the vehicle was weaponized and it attacked the law enforcement officer. He defended himself and he defended those individuals around him.
No straying from that talking point, despite the complexity of the question. How do you know the motives before an investigation has determined the outcome? That won't be answered. The talking point by those aligned with the Trump government has been the protesting against ICE, despite the fact that protest is a part of the American Constitution. And they're doubling down on this idea that she was targeting the ICE agent. Jake Tapper has a really good point. He doesn't know. How can Kristi Noem know? You know, we had commentary and statements that this ICE officer had gone to hospital, which isn't true. He hadn't gone to hospital. Well, he hadn't been hospitalized. He may have gone for checkups to say they can go to hospital. I still don't actually know if he was hit or not. He might have scraped him, but video later shows him walking away. He calls out, call 911. After quite a while, in my view, it's probably only 10 or 15 seconds. But, you know, we saw he shot 3 times, lest we forget. The car has veered straight into other cars. He has called her a fucking bitch. He's turned around and then at some point later on has said, call 911. And if you still don't believe viewpoints are now becoming dictated by political beliefs, have a look at another exchange between CNN's Jake Tapper and Kristi Noem on his show, because this tells you everything.
I want to ask a question about the rules of how law enforcement is allowed to engage when feeling threatened, per your assertions. Because I want to show some video to you right now and ask, what is the appropriate response for the police officers in this situation? Those are law enforcement officers being physically attacked. By this standard, would any of those officers be justified in shooting and killing the people causing them physical harm?
Every single situation is going to rely on the situation those officers are on. But they know that when people are putting hands on them, when they are using weapons against them, when they are physically harming them, that they have the authority to arrest those individuals.
The president pardoned every single one of those people.
And make sure that they're getting justice for their actions going forward.
President Trump pardoned every single one of those people.
And every single one of these investigations comes in the full context of the situation on the ground. And that's one thing that President Trump has been so focused on, is making sure that when we're out there, we don't pick and choose which situations are and which laws are enforced and which ones aren't. Every single one of them is being enforced under the Trump administration, and the clarity of the law stands. And if people don't like it, these members of Congress and elected officials should go change the law and make sure they have that debate and policy change.
I just showed you video of people attacking law enforcement officers. Undisputed proof, undisputed evidence. And I just said President Trump pardoned all of them. And you said that President Trump is enforcing all the laws equally. It's just not true. There's a different standard for law enforcement officials being attacked if they're being attacked by Trump supporters. We just saw that.
This individual and these instances and these investigations all have to be taken and done correctly in context of every situation that is happening on the ground. So what we are doing today as the Department of Homeland Security is out there with our law enforcement officers, making sure that we're targeting the worst of the worst and that we're talking factually about each situation and making sure that we're bringing those perpetuators of violence back to justice.
Notice how she just ignored the question. It's a really valid point. It's okay for you to protest if you're on our side, but if you're on the other side, you're anti-American. You deserve to be shot. Kristi Noem just avoided that, the whole January 6th thing. You know, because on that day, people on the right supporting Trump, they certainly went against American law, attacked the White House. They all got a pardon. Well, Renee Good won't get a pardon. She got the death penalty.
McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight.